Okay.
Okay, so hindi ko alam na naka-mute pala ako eh. Kung na-mute pala, kung bakit na-mute.
Ay, pala wala kami naririnig eh.
Okay, so nandito na tayo sa kay Shane. Nung nakaraan ay natapos natin hanggang chapter 11, verse 1 to, I think 1 to 9. So yun ang part ng the tables of nation. So this is the when the settled together to preserve their unity and develop their fame by building a grandiose city tower. Ito yung Tower of Babel. So you see ang utos ay magpalaki, no? Maganap sa buong mundo. So, but they don't want to do that. They are building their own city. So that is the story of the city of Babel. And so, nandito na tayo sa what become of Shem, one of the son of Noah. So, having just traced the disobedient family of the earth, coming from Noah's son through the horizontal genealogy, the vertical genealogy traces the line of blessing through Shem. So, ito yung patuloy sa descendant of kung saan yung plano ng Diyos ay magpatuloy. No? So, the son of Noah to Abraham, the descendant of Shem. So actually, itong chapter 11, verse 10 to 26, ay enumerations of the descendants of Shem. So letter A, Shem to, I could not pronounce that, Abrakad. His Shem was 100 years old when he became the fathers of Avrakad, that he lived 500 more years, and other sons and daughters. Verses 11 to chapter 11, verses 10 and 11. So yan pinaka-sample, ano? Palaging ganyan ay sinasabi ng generation, no? Sinasabi yung edad na kung saan siya naging tatay, tapos yung edad niya hanggang siya ay namatay. So ito yung enumerate ko, no? The whole chapter to letter C here to Eber to Peleg to Reu, Peleg to Zerog to Nahor. Then from Nahor to Terah. Then in the last verse, Terah was 70 years old when he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Hiram. Ito yung mga anak ni Terah, no? So makikita natin yung genealogy sa chapter 5 compared to chapter 11. No? So, nandyan yung 10 yan. No? 10 rin sa kabila. From Adam to Noah, 10 generation. Then, Genesis chapter 11 is also 10 generation from Shem to Terah. So makikita natin there is always a pattern in the Genesis, the book of Genesis. So it begins with, I think I put it there. No? So it begins with Adam, preceded by a genealogy of antediluvian world found in Genesis chapter 4. Dito sa task of Genesis 11 begins with Shem, but it is preceded by a genealogy of post-diluvian world found in Genesis chapter 10. Then 10 generations are listed, both of them, 5 and 11. The average age of the birth of the firstborn is between 65 to 187. So the average age of the birth of the firstborn is 29 to 37. Makikita mo yung bumababa yung edad ng tao. No? So, and with the birth of 3 sons. Doon sa Genesis chapter 5, the genealogy, and with the birth of the 3 sons of Noah. Here, and with the 3 sons of Terah, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So it has been suggested that the genealogy given in chapter 11 does not necessarily have to be interpreted as a strict chronology. So hindi ko yata sinulat dito. No? So nandiyan, no? It is not, chapter 11 is not a strict chronology. And so the total of years is not totaled actually. If the list of names in chapter 11 has been given for the purpose of determining the length of time from flood to Abraham, we would expect Moses to give us a total of hundreds of years at the end of the account, especially when they give us the years of each patriarch life. So the name and years of Canaans are absent from the Hebrew text. So the genealogy of Jesus is found in Luke chapter 3, contains the additional name of Canaan between Shelah and Arphaxad. So Luke evidently followed the Septuagint readings of the text. Number 3 bullet, so Genesis chapter 5 and Genesis chapter 11 are symmetrical in form. So meaning it has a 10 genealogy culminating in a man who has 3 sons. When it begins with 3 sons or end with 3 sons, that suggests a pattern, which deliberately found on this book. Then we have the earth was divided into days of peeling, from Genesis chapter 10, verse 25. And so the ancestral connection between the people in the biblical genealogy are abridged. So these are not actually the lengthy genealogy. So if you look at the analysis of Genesis chapter 4 to 5, man begins to call upon the name of the Lord. Genesis chapter 4, verse 26. In Genesis chapter 11, let us make for ourselves a name. That is on the time of Babel, chapter 11, verse 4. But here in Genesis chapter 12, now God blessed, I will bless you and make your name a great, Genesis chapter 12, verse 2. So these are the things that we could found as far as until chapter 12. So then the next generation that we have is Terah. It will be the generations of Terah, the story of Terah, or the narrative about Terah is verses 11, chapter 11, verse 27 to chapter 25, verse 11. So this is the summary statement of the whole account of Terah's genealogy or story. In the developments of his Terah's line, his son Abraham received a promise from God that he will give him a new land, make him a great nation, make him a blessing to all by forsaking his homeland and coming to the land of the promise, whereabout he places the promise to rest through manipulation to protect it, but the Lord's is faith to protect, maybe that is faithful to protect and confirm many times until finally Abraham is able to trust it with God, whereupon Abraham transferred the promise to Isaac. So probably next time we will just take the highlight so that we can finish this book in maybe in two more times. These are the foundation. If you have the manual, Brother Ray Brian, he has a detailed on this. The three promises of God to Abraham. So it begins with the 1127 with the title, "This is what become of the Toledot," or the generation of terror. So verses 27 to 32, it is the transition because it introduced the birth of Abram and his brother Terah and his brother uh, So Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Hiram. Hiram is the father of Lot, and he died in his birthplace, which is the Ur of Chaldeans. Uh, so, uh, so in order to enter actually the land, no? That is the translation. No? So we see uh, the transitions include the marriages of the surviving sons of Terah. Abraham married Sarai, who was barren, and Nahor married Milcah, the daughter of Haran, which is the father of Lot. So the father of Micah and Icar. Then the resettlement in the place Hiram. Okay, so you can see here the family tree of Terah, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, and Haran was Lot, the father of Lot, and we know that Abraham adopted Lot as his son. Now, these are the records of the generations of Terah, become the fathers of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran, and Haran become the fathers of Lot. So chapter 12, verses 1 to 29 is actually about, I did not put it this way. So here is the call of Abraham. We have a lot of, actually I have some about ore, but too much materials that we have. Actually, the name Sarai means my friends. I don't know why that was the meaning of the name Sarai. So we have here in chapter 12 the call to leave of Moses, of Abraham. At the time he was called Abram. So he was asked to leave, and Abraham to leave his homeland for the promised land. That is verse 12, verse 1. And God, he will bless him. The blessing, he will become great. So God promised Abraham personally the blessing that he will be a great nation. Then the promise in verse 3 that through him other nations will be blessed. Chapter 12, verse 7 is the promised land. So Abraham promise to this call was threefold. Abraham responded with unquestioning obedience. So he just obeyed God. When God called him, he just obeyed him. And then Abraham responded with justifying faith. How do we know that? How do we know that? Verse 15 will discuss that actually, how Abraham obeyed God with faith. Then Abraham responded with evangelistic worship. He built an altar, and other people also worship with him. So there is a presence of telling them that the God of the universe is with Abraham. So then in verses 12 to chapter 12, verses 10 to 20, now Abraham had traveled to Egypt to protect the promises, the promise of a seed, a land, and the blessings, to the nation. So each life as an alien, so they live as an aliens in the land of Canaan, wandering among the inhabitants of the land. And so each have wife who experienced barrenness before giving birth to a promised son. So these are the actually, hindi ko nalagay, no? The comparison between the Genesis chapter 11, chapter 1 to chapter 11, and Genesis chapter 12 to chapter 50. So the events are the central event on chapter 1 to 10 to 11 is creation, the fall of man, the flood, the towers of Babel. But in Genesis chapter 12, chapter 12 to chapter 50, the central people are the central. So while chapter 1 to 11 is the event, the creation, the fall. But here in 12 to 50, the central of the writings of Moses is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. This is where the chapter 12 to chapter 50 ay tumatakbo yung story or the narrative of these chapters. So it takes place over 250 years and yung 12 to 50. While chapter 1 to 11, 1,000 years. It takes place that period. So chapter 11, chapter 1 to 11 is the story about the human race. So the creation and then the new beginning in the time of Noah. But here in chapter 12 to 50 is about the family of Abraham. So the main emphasis of Genesis is on the people. So here is the call then the call of Abraham. Then he traveled to Egypt because of the famine. So we know the story. Abraham feared. Actually, he feared that the promise of God will not be fulfilled. You know? Too much. Let me see that. So I've now. Let me see that. So we know that it is because of the famine of chapter 12, verse 10. And then because Sarai is a beautiful woman, he was feared that the king of Egypt will take Sarai, where he make a lie that well, actually, a lie that Abraham, that why his wife is hindi niya asawa, no? But later on, it was found that Sarai was his wife. Sarai was taken by the king, well, chapter 12, 14 to 15. You know? So they pursue Sarai to the Pharaoh, who took him to he took Sarai to Harim, verse 14 to 15. So Abram paid the generous glory for Sarai, 12, chapter 12, verse 16. Here, there is an intervention of the Lord. When the Lord intervened by inflicting Pharaoh's household with fleas. So Pharaoh rebuked Abram for his deception and expel him from Egypt. So they recognize that there is something God, Egypt is a very superstitious nation. So God intervened so that there will nothing happen to Sarai. So Sarai returned and Abraham expelled. That is in verses 18 to 20. Oh, 17 to 20. So, and he asked him to leave. It's a good thing that Pharaoh did not, the Pharaoh did not punish Abram. But you see the plague, later on there is another plague on the time of Moses. So there is a sense of pattern. Now, uh, uh, Abram went back to Canaan. No? So they are already in Canaan at this time. So that is the promised land. Uh, but Canaan at the time was not yet prepared to be reclaimed by Abraham. So it is always kung nauna ka doon, you own the land. So the land actually owned by Abraham because he settled that land. Okay, so look at the pattern that we have. So Abraham in Egypt, Abraham and his family entered Egypt because of the famine. Israel in Egypt, Israel entered Egypt because of the famine in the land. Remember, they sold Joseph, then Joseph stayed there, then they went to Egypt to buy food. Pharaoh treated Abraham well. Pharaoh treated Israel harshly. They did not recognize Joseph at the time. So the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with the great plagues. In Egypt, Israel in Egypt, the Lord struck all of Egypt with great plague. This is the 10 plagues. No? Then Abraham left Egypt with all his belongings. Israel leaves Egypt with all their belongings. So when Abraham went back to Canaan, he is a rich man. If we just summarize until chapter 21, 22, we see that the promised seed in chapter 12, verse 1 and 3, then he sojourns in Egypt because he is my sister in verses 10 to 20. So Lot and Abraham have a negotiation in chapter 13. This is about the land that, you see, they return to Canaan, they are rich. And so the people of Lot and Abraham, they are quarreling because of they have so much flock. So Abraham, so in chapter 13, they divided. I mean, Abraham asked Lot to choose. Then Abraham rescued. Then there's a war. No? Chapter 13, there is a war of the kings. Then Abraham rescued Lot. Then Abraham prepared a sacrifice for the covenant ceremony. So God again promised this Abraham, his descendant in the land. Then we have the story in chapter 16 about Hagar and Ismael. Ismael is a son of the Hagar, who is the slave of Abraham. Abrahamic covenant in chapter 17. Then Abrahamic and Abraham and Ismael they were circumcised because that is the sign of the covenant. Abraham prepared a meal, and God promised that Sarah will give birth to Isaac. And God and Abraham, there is a negotiation in chapter 18 where this is about the Sodom and Gomorrah. That where God said if there is at least 10 persons in Sodom and Gomorrah, he will not destroy it. So the sojourners in Gerar, again, there is a pattern of lying. Again, here, uh, uh, Abraham lie again to show that he's saying that she is my sister to the king Abimelech. Then the promises fulfilled, Isaac born, and that is the promises of God to Abraham. Hagar and Ishmael sent out, no? And Isaac offered an altar. That is telling us that the promised seed will continue to Isaac. And that is how the Genesis is. There's a pattern. And so the letter A, chapter 13, verses chapter 13 to chapter 15, this is the faith in the promise. Abraham demonstrated faith in the promise by magnanimously giving Lot his choice of the land, which God had promised to him, by moving as a military power to deliver Lot from the king of the north, and by receiving the king of Salem, it is Melchizedek, as blessing, while refusing to tarnish God's blessing by not receiving the offer of the king of Sodom. So this is very important because this is where Melchizedek appeared to Abraham. So chapter 13, because of the strife among the herdsmen of Abraham and herdsmen of Lot, chapter 13. So remember that in verses 1 to 4, they returned from Egypt and they were very rich. They are wealthy. Even Lot is wealthy. So Abraham returned to the land as a wealthy man. And when he returned to Bethel, so he built an altar and proclaimed his faith. If you go back to Egypt, it seems that Abraham was lost there. You cannot read anything that Abraham built an altar in the land of Egypt. But now, in chapter 13, he went back to his faith and he built and worshiped God. So this is the land could not sustain the. So here is the goodness of Abraham, where he asked Lot to choose first. He owned the land, but he asked his nephew, choose you want to go. And the land, so here is the comparison between Genesis chapter 12 and chapter 13. So they face a famine, and there's a problem of lack of prosperity, and that's why they went to Egypt. And the solution was to travel down to Egypt. But Genesis chapter 13 they face an overabundance of flood, a problem involving abundance of prosperity. And what is the solution now is the need to separate. Lot travels down to the land that is reminiscence of Egypt, meaning this is a big city, Sodom and Gomorrah. You want to stay in the big city as he saw uh, when he traveled in Egypt. But eventually there is a war. So Abraham settled the strife, offering the first choice to Lot. So, but when Lot chose Sodom and Gomorrah, the Lord affirmed to Abraham his promises in chapter 13, verses 14 to 18. So several factors that we can observe in Abraham's case when he allowed Lot to choose. Let me see that. I need to scroll my notes. So this is the factors of circumstances. So the factor is that they need to be separated. They have to part way because of the problem. But the principle here is that usually God uses circumstances to put his plan and guide his people. Now, he is concentrating to Abraham. The seed will continue to Abraham, not on his cousin. So the factors of biblical principle, when we guide, it is a guide for us when we making decision. The principle of the Bible is our guide. So Abraham was able to do this too. He had already been told by God that he will be a blessing to the world. In the light of this promise, he had came to the land where he could proclaim the name of the Lord before the world is watching because of his worship. So now the proclamation was being down out by uh, because of the strife of the herdsmen of Lot. So then the factor of self-sacrifice. Abraham yielded all his personal rights to the Lord. He even asked Lot to choose. He owned the land, but he tell Lot to choose. Now, there is a self-sacrifice there. And there is a factors of faith. Abraham developed of self-confidence to the Lord. The Lord promises him, and now he trusts God. Now, the factors that went into Lot's decision, the factors of apparent delights. 13 verse 10, he saw, and Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plains of Jordan, that it was watered everywhere. No? So he chose a very, very good land. That is what he saw by his naked eye. So the factors of financial and social gain, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were reminiscent of the land of Egypt. They were progressive. He chose a land that has a river Jordan River, which is very helpful during the for the flock and for farming. Then the factors of financial, people go to the city because of financial and social gain. So the factors of the defendant desire. So he is a wealthy person too. But the fact is that we never read Lot building an altar or calling upon the names of the Lord. Meaning he is just following the elders, Abraham. So now it's time that he need to consider himself, even without consulting God, to go to the big city. So that is how. Then we have here the contrast on the decision of Abraham and Lot. So Abraham, God led by means of his circumstances. But Lot took it as an advantage. He went to a fertile land, a city also. Abraham, his choices lead to the forbearance of divine commission. Lot, his choice lead to the forbearance of his own wealth. Kaya nga, isa sa mga factors is financial and social gain, social status. Abraham yielded up all his personal rights. Lot took that right that were properly that of his uncle. So he left the choice after the Lord. He made his choice. So here you see the two comparison. There is an amount of faith in Abraham's choice. Lot, it is just a personal gain. And so altar in chapter 13, so Abraham built an altar, and there is an evangelistic effort on the part of Abraham. His spirit is offer of the land, his choice of the land, the Lot. Then God's speech, his offer of the land. No? So God is the one who offered Abraham to remain in Canaan. So Abraham built an altar in Hebron. And so now, chapter 13, chapter 14, there is a war between kings. There is a rebellion among the kings, and there is a collateral damage because Lot, who is living in that place, he was captive. So here, the rescue of Lot from the invaders when powerful eastern kings sweep through the land, destroying and plundering the cities of Jordan and taking Lot captive. Abraham and his federations of retainers or his farmers pursued and defeated the invaders in a surprise, not attack, rescuing Lot and the positions of Lot. So there is a military campaign because of the so-called rebellion. And that is chapter 14, verses 1 to 12. So the invading king plundered the city, and they make Abraham or Lot a captive. So the defeat of Jordanian king, that is the Jordan kings, where Lot reside in chapter 14, verses 8 to 12. So the invading kings plundered the goods and captive Lot. Letter B, the rescue of Abraham. He was victorious. Upon hearing of the invasion and the captures of Lot, Abraham must mustered the strained men together with his allies, pursued and defeated the invaders in a night attack, rescuing Lot and all his possession. So chapter 14, actually 1 to 4, the enumeration of uh, uh, the kings that invaded Jordan. Then the king of the enemies are the king of Sodom, king of Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bildah. They were the kings. No? So these five kings, five rebellious cities, were all located in the valley of Shittim, and they were uh, captured by the three kings. So, but in number 314, chapter 14, 17 to 24, we see here the Melchizedek and Sodom meet Abraham. So the untarnished blessing, when Abraham was blessed by the king of Salem, Melchizedek, and then offered riches by the king of Sodom. Abraham swore that he will not take nothing from the king of Sodom, lest the blessing should be tarnished. So we know that that the four king sweep the Jordan. They defeated the Jordanian kings, the five kings, and including the king of Sodom and Gomorrah. They fight against the five kings. So the rebellions of the five cities of Jordanian plain. But after the war, we know that Melchizedek meet Abraham and the king of Sodom. So the king of Sodom come out to meet Abraham after the battle, and he offered continuous allegiance. But Abraham did not accept that offer. And then Melchizedek, the king of Salem, come out to meet Abraham after the battle, brought him bread and wine. And then he blessed Abraham. But this is the first time that the king, Melchizedek, actually he is a priest. At the same time, he is a king. So this is the beginning of seeing now the priest and king, which is the a shadow of the things to come. Because now the king of Salem blessed Abraham, and God and then receive the tithe. This is the first time that Abraham gave tithe to the king of Salem, or to God. So that's what, but there is no command yet at this time. So a tithe, 10% is not actually new in the covenant of God and Moses. It was practiced by, uh, by Abraham at the time. And so let me see that. So here, letter D, verses 21, the king of Sodom make a deal, and the king of Sodom offered Abraham wealth in exchange for the people. So, but Abraham refused. Abraham swore before Most High Lord God, who blessed him with victory, that he will not take nothing that belongs to the king of Sodom, lest Sodom will take the credit. The credit should belong to God. Now, here is the comparison between the king of Sodom and the king of Salem. The king of Sodom, a city of sinful pleasures. Sodom is a picture of sin. King of Salem, a city of peace. So both of them come out to meet Abraham, or at the time Abraham, and Bera and Melchizedek. Bera offered riches to Abraham, and Melchizedek offered blessing to Abraham along with bread and wine. Meron silang Lord's Supper, nung panahon na yan. But anyway, that is the shadow of things to come. So Abraham refused Bera's offer. Abraham accepted the blessing and the gifts, bread and wine. Abraham returned all his riches and people. Abraham gave to him the tithes of all the spoils of war. So the city of Sodom represents the city of man. The city of Salem is represent the city of God. Now the comparison between see the pattern that we have here. The pattern in the book of Genesis 13 and 14 began with strife between servants of Lot and the servant of Abraham. In chapter 14 begins with strife between the Elamite kings and the cities of Jordan. Lot moved to Sodom, Lot taken from Sodom. As a result of the strife, Abraham separated from Lot. As a result of war and strife, Abraham goes to rescue Lot. After the separation from Lot, God comes and makes promise to Abraham. After Abraham rescued Lot, Melchizedek come and bless Abraham. God promised to give the land of Canaan to Abraham. Abraham gave tithe to Melchizedek. You see the pattern that we had here in the book of Genesis. And that's end our discussion. Maikli lang, no?
Gusto nila yan.
Alam ko. Kasi ang hirap kasi mag-transfer sa kwan eh. Sa dami ng material. Wow. So, maybe next time we will just mention it so that we will go faster. Maybe
Oo, kasi
3 more or
kasi
2 more.
Pintachok, mayroon ka pang 4 books eh.
Oo nga. Pero mas madali lang yung 4 eh. Ito kasi parang foundation eh. Foundations of the promises of God. Maybe two more, no? We will just highlight the important events in chapter 15 to chapter, let's begin with up to chapter 15. No? Dalawa lang kasi ito, yung remaining chapters between Abraham and Joseph. So mas maraming
May tanong?
tanong. Actually, nakuha ko na, no? Actually, tapos ko na yung chapter 22, no? Ganito lang yung nangyari, no? Let me see that.
Brad Bert, yung yung anak kay Ismael ba? Wala nang balita yun, Wala nang pinatunguhan yun.
Wala pa tayo doon.
Pa yun, wala pa?
Wala pa tayo doon, no?
Advance pala ako.
Nakaikon pa lang tayo. Naka-Abraham pa lang tayo, no? We will highlight that next time. Kasi napakaraming event dito.
Nagmamadali yata sa Genesis, ha? Nagmamadali matapos.
Oo nga. Anyway, probably I will give you the outline, a decent outline of the book of Genesis, the book of this came from Malik, Dr. David E. Malik. He just summarized. So, but I am not actually, the problem with me is I'm not just taking one book actually in my discussion. There's a lot of books that I read and included it here. That's why it's too long. But, every time that I teach, actually, I do not rely on one book only. I usually include a lot of information from the other books. The good thing now is just you can buy books and you can just copy and paste. Before, you need to type everything. So I have some books that is in the internet.
Brother Bert, tanong po. Tanong po, Brad.
Sige, Brad.
Kung yung po si Abraham nagbigay siyang tithes kay Melchizedek. Ang sabi niyo po ay practice niya. Hindi po yun komando sa kanya. Hindi po ba yun po ba ay komandang Diyos sa kanya na magbigay ng tithes?
Wala pang utos no? Kaya in-emphasize ko na is practicing it.
Apo. Ang tanong ko po,
and the law of tithes is not yet given at this time. Binigay kay Moses yun eh.
Ang tanong ko po, Brad, ay kung nagpa-practice si Abraham ng gano'n na wala namang utos, pwede po bang i-practice din natin yan sa panahon natin na wala namang utos sa atin?
Kasi may youth decks, hindi mo pwedeng gawin, no? Kasi may utos sa atin eh. So, doon kasi sa Old Testament, may dalawang batas, no? The patriarchal, dalawa, no? The natural law and the law that now giving to that God. Actually, there is no law at the time given to Abraham, but all are promises. From the patriarchal dispensation, we receive all the promises except when God make a covenant with Abraham. And that covenant needs circumcision as a sign to be a part of that covenant. Yun lang actually ang parang makikita natin utos kay Abraham. Na hindi naman, may mga utos pa na, kunwari, dalhin mo yung anak mo doon sa, give him, make him a sacrifice. But pertaining to law, that is the law that given to Moses, wala kang makikita dito during the patriarch. Maybe Moses did not wrote it because Abraham worshiped God through the altars, the family altar, but maybe God make a command to Abraham, but we don't know. What we can read is the promises of God. Unlike during the time of Moses, it is very clear that God said, write this covenant. Because it is actually natural for a nation to have a law. And God gave them the law. And that is the elements of being a nation. You need a king, you need the territory, you need a law. And you need we call it the constitution, the commandment. So now we see how God deals with, but most of the story here about the story of people, the story of Abraham, the story of Isaac, the story of Jacob, and the story of Joseph, to show that the promised seed, the promised land, that the promises of God is continue showing that it is fulfilling to the family of Abraham.
So Brad Bert, ang ating Panginoon Diyos, direct nakipag-usap pero hindi pisikalan sa mata. Katulad kay Abraham.
Well, mayroon tayong tawag doon, no? Nagsalita rin siya. We don't read kung paano siya nakipag-usap kay Abraham. But there was a time that he spoke directly to Abraham in the form of an angel. So we don't know siguro hindi, no? Hindi siya yung being a God, the God, that face to face. What we have read is his face to face with Moses, and Moses has to need to cover his face because of the reflection of the power of God.
So boses lang talaga, Brad, ano? Boses lang.
Boses lang probably, no? Or kung basahin mo yung Hebrews chapter 1, so makikita mo doon na yung commentary ng aklat ng Hebrew kung paano magsalita, kung paano yung Diyos nakipag-ugnayan sa kanila, no? Some other books you can read that he talk to them by dreams, like Daniel, like mga paraan na ginamit ng Panginoon Diyos para he reveal himself to others. So some of the books are commentaries on how, not the human commentaries that we have, but these are written to give us insight of what is happening in the Old Testament, especially the book of Hebrews. Ang tawag ko dyan commentary kasi they comment on what happened in the Old Testament because they were inspired by God. God revealed to them what is his plan during the Genesis event, as well as the 4 books that Moses wrote. But there is a pattern. Makikita mo yung pattern doon. During the time of Abraham, there's always a pattern. May paborito rin the patterns of favoritism also. The pattern started at the time of, what call that, Rebecca and Isaac. Isaac has a favorite, and Rebecca has his own favorite, Jacob. Then Jacob has his also favorite. And so as you see the pattern, how when there is something wrong in the family, there will be event, things will happen.
Teacher Brad,
So the story,
Brother Roman,
Brad, nakikita kita.
teacher, dito ba sa Genesis chapter 11 na ba tayo? Pwede ako nagkamali sa yung promise ba na ni God sa seed ay sa chapter 12, no? Di ba tayo dumating doon?
Kay Kwan. Kay Abraham.
Tapos, inulit pa yun, no? So, dito sa inulit pa yun sa 18 yata yun. Chapter 18.
Chapter
So,
18.
dito, sa tanong, di ba pwedeng ating i-practice din kahit walang command? Dito kasi, pinapakita kasi dito, sa tingin ko, the superiority of the promise done to the law of Moses. Kasi ang law of Moses is only temporal at it will be removed, no? It was removed. Sa Galatians chapter 3:25, ni-remove ito saan, kailan? Hanggang kamatayan nung namatay si Kristo sa cross, no? So, ang superiority nito, ang tanong, bakit pa binigay ang kautusan na may mawawala din naman pala at mag-fade away. Kaya ibinigay ang kautusan in preparation for the coming of the seed. Yun ang defense ni Pablo doon sa Galacia. So makita natin ang pagkakaiba, no? Superiority of the promise done to the law of Moses.
Yeah, the book of Hebrews discussed that, no? Discuss that the superiority, even you see the book of Hebrews discuss the superiority of Christ even to the angel, to Moses, to the superiority of the worship in the Old Testament, because all these things from Genesis, they are the shadows of these things to come. And what we see here is the revelations of God. Pinapakita niya yung line how the seed continues.
Yes.
So he need a nation that it will continue the seed. So ito yung hindi kasi kagad ni-reveal ng Diyos yung books, ano? Yung 66, ilang books, 39 books, ano? So the Old Testament. It is piece by piece ni-reveal ng Diyos yung kanyang revelation to these people of God in the Old Testament. So, ang sabi nga natin, may utos na tayo, a new covenant. No? If you look at here in the Old Testament, God make a covenant with Noah. I will not destroy the land, the earth through the flood. Then he make a covenant also with Abraham, with the promises. So he made the covenant to Moses, and he gave the covenant through the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments. That's it. So from Exodus, it begins the story of the nation of Israel up to the last books of Old Testament. These are the story of the nation of Israel. But here in Genesis is the foundation how the nation of Israel become a nation. And the Exodus, it is the time where they become actually a nation because the four elements of being a nation was given there. But they need to learn, no? Like United States, like Philippines. Philippines become a nation. They were governed by barangay, no? Different datus, different kings. But they were united because of the so-called Spaniard colonization of the Philippines. And the revolution by Andres Bonifacio is the start of where we become a nation. When we become a nation, actually there is still a process. When the Americans give us the nation, when we are under Americans, we are not actually a nation until the Quezon, the President Quezon, he went to United States and he was given the Commonwealth. A Commonwealth means you are still a part of the invading country or the colonial nation, United States, until we will given independence. So the independence now is giving you the government, and the government has four elements now, and that is, or there's still the kingdom also. You have the people, the territory, and you have the law, and you have the king or the government. The same thing here. No? God revealed at this time of who will continue the seed. No? And it is Abraham was chosen. Okay, magandang history. No? Pero ito, next time we will not do this. No? We will just highlight. Maybe I will give you the outline, the detailed outline.
May
Then
hands
we
up
will
si
just,
hands up si Brother Ryan.
awa si
May
Ryan.
question si Brad Ryan.
Akala ko kumakaway ka eh.
Nasa chat box, Brad Bert.
Ah,
Yung kanyang question nasa chat box.
oh, basahin mo nga, hindi ko kapan eh. Anong tanong mo, Brad? Hindi ko makita dito kung saan yung chat box eh. Chat.
Si ano daw,
Was it
Brad?
right?
Ayan.
Was it right to assume that before Abraham was called by God, he was a pagan? Yes, that's true. No? He was a pagan worshiper. Even his name actually is a pagan name. I tried to look at that is the meaning of his name. I could not find it here. But I know I write it here that even his name is a pagan name. He was a worshiper. I didn't put it here that in Joshua, we know that they are on the other side, they are worshiping the other gods. Yeah, that's true. He is a pagan worshiper until God called him.
May verse ba, Brad? May chapter verse? Wala.
Oh, meron. Actually, no, hindi ko lang makita ngayon, no.
Oh, kasi yung sa Mosaikal,
Nag-worship sila ng kwento, no? I could not, may verse yan, no? That they are worshiping other gods. Sige, Brad, June.
Hindi, ang naisip ko lang yung mga Israel nagsimula naman kay Kuan. Judah, kay Jacob, anak-anak ni Isaac na apo ni Abraham.
Oo. Mayroong version here, could not, I supposed to put it here to show that he is actually a worshiper, a pagan worshiper. And